Hi, my name is Maurice Lewis, and thank you for listening to Detroit Sports World Talk. Now let's get to it. The Detroit Pistons, they had a really good year this year, especially after having the years that they've been having. They made the eighth spot in the playoffs. Unfortunately, they lost to the Cavaliers, who then ended up winning the championship this year. However, they gave them a run for their money. Now, if I'm the Detroit Pistons for this year's draft, this year's 2016 draft, what will I address? Well, let's see. The Detroit Pistons have a really good point guard, Reggie Jackson, probably going to be an all-star this coming up year. Very, very, very underrated. He has something to prove. He has a chip on his shoulder. Contavious Caldwell-Pope. This guy is amazing, and then the ceiling is just so high up for him. This man, you don't even know what he's going to do this year because he has something to prove too. And then you got a guy like Marcus Morris, who is just the biggest underdog that we've seen in sports. The biggest underdog. Like, this guy will come in and do work for you. He averaged almost like 15 points this year. Been a really good small forward this year. Then we ended up getting Tobias Harris. Like, this guy was a steal for Brandon Jennings and Ilyasova. And then Andre Drummond. I really don't have to talk much about him because, I mean, this guy's a star in itself. So if I'm the Detroit Pistons and I had to address a position or maybe a bench player, I'm going to go for probably a bench player. Our starting five, very young. I mean, our highest age in our starting five is like 25 years old. So, I mean, very, very young, very, very growing. So much growing to happen in the starting lineup. So much growth. So, if I'm Stan Van Gundy and I have that 18th pick, the problem that we had this year was a point guard. Having a backup point guard. Reggie Jackson, as soon as he got out the game got kind of out of control. There was the lack of defense as soon as he got out the game. I mean, this guy plays so many minutes because he had to. I mean, we had Steve Blake coming in, and this guy, no offense to him, I mean, really great player, had a really good career in the NBA. But we can all say that, you know, he had a down year. Really good shooter, but couldn't hold anybody. I mean, everybody's assignment on the other team was, if Steve Blake's checking you, go after him, because he was a nightmare on defense. A nightmare. So, if I'm the Detroit Pistons, I'm going to go after a point guard, but I want to go after a power forward first. Being that I want to go after a power forward first, this year's point guards are so deep. I'm talking, we have Murray out of Kentucky. We have Ulis out of Kentucky. Ulis might fall a little bit, but guys like Dunn out of Providence, expect those guys to be taken early or they're probably going to be top 10. Let's just say that. They're probably going to be top 10. So, with that being said, I can expect a guy like Wade Baldwin to go and drop maybe 18th for us. That's if Memphis or Chicago don't get him, because those teams in particular need a point guard. I may go after a guy like Jonte Murray out of Washington. Huge. I mean, 6'5", athletic. I don't know if Stan Van Gundy would go after a guy like that. I mean, this guy, I mean, don't get me wrong, he's amazing, but it just seems like he has a little bit more developing that he needs to do. Maybe he came out of college a little bit too early. But, I mean, this guy can definitely fly. He's athletic. He can shoot. However, he's young. And then you got a guy like Demetrius Jackson, who's proven him out of Notre Dame. He's 6'1", athletic, can get to the basket, finish. He's very strong. Why not go after a guy like him? That guy, and then you can go after a guy like Tyler Ulis. I mean, there's been some questions about Tyler Ulis. Maybe 5'9", nothing wrong with that. However, he's a matchup on the other end for defense. So, I mean, 5'9", I mean, you still got guys like Isaiah Thomas and Nate Robinson, who's been very successful in the league. But you don't see too many Nate Robinsons and Isaiah Thomases. You don't see too many. You see a lot of guards that are 6 feet and over, but you don't see a lot of guys like that's under 6 feet tall. You just don't. You know, not saying that Tyler Ulis can't do it and he can't be successful. He's definitely a top pick, very talented. But will a guy like Stan Van Gundy go after him? Because I mean, he's well known for pretty much going after bigger guards. I mean, who knows? But for Stan Van Gundy's experiences, I mean, you know, he's had the Jameer Nelsons, you know, who's been very good for Orlando when he was a coach there. So, you know, Tyler Ulis, why not? But if I'm Stan Van Gundy, I'm gonna go after a power forward because this year's draft for point guards is kind of deep. So if I'm Stan Van Gundy, I'm gonna go after a guy if we can get this guy if he slips. Sabonis out of Gonzaga. I mean, this guy is 6'10", huge, has really good post moves. A little bit slow getting down the court. I mean, I don't know if this guy can keep up. I mean, I'm not saying he can't develop that speed, but this guy, really talented, you know, and then, you know, he has a Hall of Famer father who's played in the league for a long time. So why not, you know, take a chance if we can get that guy? I mean, that guy is kind of projected to be a top 10 pick or even maybe a top 15 pick. But if he slips, I'm going to take my gamble on a guy like that, especially when you can maybe even go smaller, take Drummond out, and put a guy like him in there to play the 5, or he can play the 4. If I'm also Stan Van Gundy, I may go after a guy many people question. Thon Maker. This guy's a 7-footer, athletic, very young, however, has untapped potential. I mean, we don't know what this guy can do. We don't even know. I mean, we don't know what he's going to do in the NBA. I mean, he played basketball overseas, but I mean, that kind of basketball is kind of different from over here, you know. But we've seen what he can do. We've seen it, but I mean, the type of competition over there, and he's young. He's very young. He would be a risk taking, you know. I would take him because for the development process, but I don't know if Stan Van Gundy's the type of person that will wait to see if somebody develops to be a great basketball player. He wants to win now, especially with this type of basketball team that we have now too. If I'm Stan Van Gundy, I'm also going to take a risk and take Bryce Johnson. I mean, he's played a couple years with North Carolina. This guy can ball. I mean, 6'10", really athletic, kind of, you know, can fly down the floor a little bit. You know, he can go up and get it. You know, a little bit of experience too. You know, he's got some experience under his belt. Went to a national championship for North Carolina. Didn't win, but he was a contributor. So why not go after a guy like him? If I can't go after these guys, I may go after a center. I may go after maybe an A.J. Hammond, you know, and he's very experienced too. He's got some years under his belt in college, you know, and he's a 7-footer. He'd be a really good backup for Andre Drummond. And if those kind of guys and if our picks are kind of limited, and you know, because we're already high up in the draft anyway, I may go for a guy like Denzel Valentine, even though we may not need a shooting guard. I mean, we got Stanley Johnson that can come in and play shooting guard. We got Reggie Bullock that can come in and play. Now Darren Hilliard, who's now proven he can come in and play. I mean, I don't know. That'd be a gamble. Maybe we can trade the 18th pick and maybe get a couple draft picks or get a couple second-round picks because this year's draft is so deep. Maybe we can do that. Or I may go after a guy like Karis LeVert. You know, maybe keep it hometown. You know, he's still a good guy that you could take a gamble on. You know, however, he's a shooting guard. May not be something that we need or need to address. But for development purposes and for people that can come in and play now, like for guys that have the experience to come in and play now, you could kind of take a risk on. So, if I'm the Pistons in this year's draft, I'm going to go after a power forward, then a point guard. Now, for point guard, if I were to go after a point guard in the second round, I'm going to go after a guy like Gary Payton II. Gonna go. There's no questions about it. You know, I feel like his ceiling's very high. Not a lot of people may agree with me on that, but this guy, he's a hard worker. Don't compare him to his father. He's a different type of player. You know, he's more athletic than his dad. He can shoot too. You know, he just needs to get in there, play, and do his job and learn. That's the kind of player he is. He's a learner. He's a coachable. Bring him to the Pistons. If you can't get him in, bring a guy in like Marcus Page. He just recently worked out for the Detroit Pistons. This guy, to me, very underrated. This guy just went to a national championship, and this guy isn't even mentioned in the mock draft or even mentioned in the second round. This guy is underrated. Like, nobody's looking at him to be drafted. Why not take a risk on him? He's hit the big shots for North Carolina. He's led that team to the national championship. Why not take a risk on a guy like him? Like I said, this year's point guards are deep, you know. And if we don't end up drafting a point guard, I mean, we still have guys like Reggie Jackson and Lorenzo Brown, if the opportunity presents itself for him to be the backup point guard for the Detroit Pistons. Once again, my name is Maurice Lewis. You can follow me on Twitter, DET Sports World. Once again, that's DET Sports World. Thank you for listening. Have a good one.